This week we are talking about website menus. It's the sexiest topic I could think of. So, but I think it's important. It's it isn't particularly a sexy topic, but it is one of these things that we have to pay attention to, and I think something that it turns out a lot of people get like really, really wrong. So let's launch into it. I was kind of inspired to talk about this after reading some things on Search Engine Journal. So the top line for all this is your website navigation should just satisfy users. Then it can optimize. Then you can optimize for SEO performance. But just always, 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 you have to be thinking how does a person who visits this website actually want to use it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Makes sense to you. That's the main goal. But at the same time, you also have to make sure that the search engine can, by some means, get to all of your content, or you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you should think about it as it has to satisfy both. I mean, ideally, you don't want to be favoring one over the other. But I think this article from Search Engine Journal was reacting specifically against maybe overly trying to optimize for SEO, and that causing just sort of compromise. Like human beings then look at these things and say, like, what is it? I don't understand the organization of this. So it needs to be all of those things. It needs to be intuitive, and it needs to be something that a machine can index and understand. So in researching this topic, I found that like the front page of Google was just filled with articles that all say the same thing. So I guess there's some consensus around this topic, or everybody just writes their article based on the number one search article on Google, and then everything just ends up looking the same. But I did dig a little bit deeper into some of these issues and found that there is pretty much consensus around this stuff. So first thing I thought was interesting came a blog post from Orbit Media. They were talking about what your menu actually says. So a good example that they give, and I think you see this a lot, is they show like main navigation showing products, services, about, blog. Pretty common, right?
See this a lot. Yeah.
But they replaced it, and their example here is Navco, a navigation company, and they replaced products and services with compasses, chronometers, charts, and maps. So rather than saying here are our products and then burying what those specifics are underneath that, like elevate those products and services to the very top so that it's making it really easy, because nobody goes to your website for products. They go for a specific product, right? They want a compass, they want a map, they want whatever. If it's your services, it should be whatever services you offer. So if you're a lawyer, it should be, estate planning, contract review, whatever the service is that a person is going to be looking for. In the case of our nonprofit clients, there's some specifics there. One of the things that this post mentioned was format-based navigation as well. So just like putting up these sort of broad categories that no one's looking for is bad. It's also bad to be organizing things according to format. So this would be like videos and photos or white papers, telling visitors like the format of the content. Again, no one goes to a website looking for videos or for white papers. They're just going for a specific topic. So like our think tank clients should be organizing things according to category. Like if this is copyright policy, it should be noted as that, not I want to find the copyright policy under white papers. I don't even think it's worth having like a separate way of navigating that's based on format. Maybe in like things like advanced search, we've seen that, right?
It seems like more of a search thing. So, but you still see this, of course. But I think that's where it would really shine, and I would say it's completely applicable to use it. as a filter.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think if you have user evidence that users are looking for something, like I'm thinking about the typical use case. So you have to imagine who is visiting the website. Maybe they do want to like click on a video or an article first before they decide to read like your 40-page dissertation on whatever the topic is. But I think you lay that out on individual like topic pages. I've seen think tanks do a very good job of this, of putting like video front and center, popular articles, like someone's written something magazine length either for their own blog, or maybe they've actually written something for a magazine. Maybe they've had like a piece appear in Forbes or something like this. And that stuff is front loaded to give you the quick version of this before you, because not everybody is going to want to invest the time into reading the long form thing.
No.
Like our think tank clients, I'm thinking, they're appealing to people like in the press. Somebody might want a really easy to digest, like quick version of whatever this thing is. There might be somebody else who's writing a longer piece, or really maybe is writing a lot about this topic. So they do want to invest the time into getting like a 20 or 30 or 40 page understanding of it. But this comes from, this isn't just like assertion. The Nielsen Norman Group has done research on this and found that when things are organized according to category, like the things that somebody might actually be searching for, you get more click-throughs. That sort of stuff is used more by actual users than anything based on format. So format-based navigation is just not what users are looking for.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. You just finished. I want to go back to something once you're finished, but we can finish the format discussion first.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm done.
Just if if we go back to the being descriptive part, from if you go back to the Orbit Media article, we had like you said before, the example given was a menu that said products, services, about, blog, contact in the beginning, right? And they're saying this is very generic and common to hundreds or millions of websites. And better it will be a descriptive navigation that includes relevance to both search engines and visitors, something like compasses, chronometers, charts, and maps. So these three things, of course, really only fall under the products in the first menu. They still do include de-emphasized about, blog, and contact there in the improved example. So I think you have to be, just
but
have
they're
to
pushing those they're pushing those to a secondary type of menu. Like you often see the sort of like little top strip that includes that, or maybe even push it into the footer.
It's like a de-emphasized menu there, but you have to always design this around the context of the website. What matters for this particular website. So here, this is an e-commerce site, maybe something like Amazon. So maybe it's not that important in this case that the visitor knows what they're about. But for a lot of sites, this is important, and I would not de-emphasize the about menu. And it's probably okay to call it about because people recognize what that means. They just want to know more about the company. So I don't think it would be a good idea to be creative there. That's of course not the goal. It's the goal there from Orbit Media was to just show an example of a descriptive menu. And I think about is descriptive for that. And that's why they kept it that way there. They just de-emphasized it. I'm not sure why they did that. Honestly, it could just be that the image is not big enough to hold everything, or they want to show that for an e-commerce site. Makes sense just to focus on the products. So that's on a case-by-case basis. I just wanted to point that out because I don't think it's necessarily bad to have about, blog, and contact in your menu. It depends on the site if it should be in the main navigation or not. But I think those titles are okay for those links, and they're showing that too. I just noticed it had de-emphasized. So, and
I mean, it's all based on what your goal is for the user to accomplish.
Yeah. But I agree
if you don't sell products and
services
online, Like, as in somebody can't just sign up for that service or whatever. Or maybe the
Yeah.
service is like the only thing that's displayed on the front page. It really depends on your type of site, right?
Yeah, of
But then
course.
you
I mean,
totally want those things to be.
someone selling compasses and chronometers probably doesn't have to make a deep connection with a user. So I think it's okay to emphasize the up page unless it's some sort of a luxury compass or chronometer. But for different types of products, the about page might have find a home in the main navigation there,
Yeah,
even a block.
or I would think for a lot of e-commerce companies, they're also trying to establish that relationship in a lot of different ways. Like,
Yeah,
maybe you're coming to their website not to sort of start that relationship, but to consummate that relationship by buying something,
sure.
and the connection to them may have already been established by videos and blog posts and social media. You're posting. I don't know. This idea of a premium compass company as the example is sort of funny, but you could be posting these things on Instagram and gosh, I really want that. Now I'm going to go through. So the purpose of the website is to close the deal. Not to convey a ton of information, or that's secondary at least. So the other thing I thought was interesting here is that drop-down menus are considered really bad practice. And I know that I tend to like to avoid them. But I guess I hadn't read the literature about how usability studies show that they're really, really quite bad. So the theory behind this is that visitors move their eyes faster than they move their mouse, meaning that when they move their mouse to a menu item, they've likely already decided to click. So they see something like products, and they think that, oh, that's the thing I click on. And when you hover over that and now something drops down out of it, they're not expecting that, especially if the product link is something that they can't click, then they're really not expecting that. Like, oh, so now this is giving me this other option.
Sometimes you can't click it.
Yeah, and that's like a cardinal rule that Apple developed early in the human interface guide days, right? Was that if you set a clear if there's a clear expectation set for the user, don't defy the expectation. So if there's a thing in a menu, it ought to be something that you can click. There's also a problem with drop-downs being something that, depending on how they're done, how they're implemented on the site, it may not be indexed by search engines terribly well. And that means that the sort of structure of the site that you're trying to convey with the menu, here are our 4 main sections and there's subsections to them, is just lost because it takes some sort of a hover effect or a tap or whatever it is to get the menu to be exposed, and the search engine's not going to index that properly. But one type of drop-down,
it's getting better at that, but it does sometimes happen. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So the one exception to this is the mega dropdown, which offers a ton of options, and you typically see this on like e-commerce sites. I'm thinking of going to supplyhouse.com to order plumbing parts for my bathroom renovation recently, and you're clicking some sort of generic word, supplies or something at the top, and it's bringing down a huge block that covers up what's ever on the page, the individual product page you're on, or the front page with an index of lots of things, and then it's showing you categories and subcategories all sort of like laid out for you there. Users like this because it's clear that you're not that whatever the word is that's used is implying that it's going to expose a menu. There's maybe even like a little down arrow next to it. So you're not defying the user's expectations. They understand, okay, this is going to open something up for me. And then after that first click, they can get to whatever they want. And the purpose of having that like mega drop down is that it is not taking up like inches of real estate on the display. So it just sort of tucks away and hides when you're not using it to navigate through the site. So again, that makes sense. Like, you're putting users first. You're establishing a clear cause and effect. So mega dropdown is the way to go. Otherwise, avoid it. Just have top level navigation and have people dive into subcategories after they click one of those things.
Yeah, there's of course a very specific use case with mega dropdowns. Not everyone is going to be in a situation where they can use them, but I don't think it surprises anyone that they are okay, because I mean I really like using them. It's a nice experience. You're going through this digging, you're making like an excavation to find your item. It's fun, I think. You go deeper and deeper, and the links get more and more relevant to what you're looking for, and it's I think it's a satisfying experience. Yeah, and I think Amazon still uses this, right? In addition to site you mentioned.
Yeah, but it's a lot of really big e-commerce sites use it, and it's because it performs
it's mainly
really
an
well.
e-commerce thing, but yeah, I'm sure there are other examples where it's used, but I can't think of it now.
I think like Newegg, Monoprice, these sorts of like nerd sites that I go to buy electronic things.
Yeah, that's all e-commerce, I guess. But yeah, no information sites you can think of. I'm not sure. But yeah, in any case, they're definitely very much okay.
Yeah, I read my news on apps, man, so I don't know. Okay, what's the next topic on our list?
You have the order of items, correct?
Yeah. So there's two effects going on when it comes to the order of what you do with things. This is sort of like what comedians talk about with their set lists. Like they put the best joke last, the second best joke up front, or maybe vice versa. But the idea is that people's memory of things or their impression of things are affected by two effects. One is the primacy effect, whatever is said first, because people say, well, it's said first, it must be important, and whatever is said last. And this also applies to things that just appear in a written list. So it's called the primacy effect and the recency effect. What's the first thing I heard, and what's the most recent or the last thing I heard? And so if like, you're one of our nonprofit think tank clients, you might be thinking about research areas is the first thing, and the last thing is donate, or support us. And other things appear in between that are less important. Maybe if you run an e-commerce site, you're putting the most common thing and maybe something that you want to emphasize last. So anyway, you can strategize around that, building the most important things at the top of the list and at the bottom of the list, and the stuff in between is sort of just lost in the middle of the sandwich.
So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's something to be cognizant of. I don't know how much weight one should put into this, especially if it makes you like order things in some way that's like less logical. I'm thinking of our publisher client who has, high school, middle school, elementary school books. You wouldn't want to like have those be out of order. There's a certain like chronology there that makes sense. So again, I don't think you should ever be like optimizing against sort of standard logic. So don't ever try to be like clever when you should just be obvious.
But so an exception here is, of course, when you have a mobile menu, you probably want to just pick the most important items. I guess you have very limited real estate, so you want to pick your 3 to 5, I suppose, most important links, and just put them at the top, and then followed by that all the less important links. So not the last one is not important anymore because you probably have to scroll to see it. But that's a different case because you have so few links. So that's still relevant here, I think, because mobile is always getting bigger. I think for many markets it's already the majority of the traffic, not for all, but So, I mean, of course, within that, those 3 to 5 links, you can still use this this logic, but the first and last of those is are important. But you'll then have, if you have a large navigation menu, you'll then have links after that that are de-emphasized. So definitely don't want to put an important link at the bottom there. But
the other thing to consider here is that the person who is navigating through the menus of your website is not somebody who is, you're using that menu because you're trying to find something. You're trying to find something specific. You have a specific intention in mind. There's an end goal that's in your mind. All you want to do is get to it as fast as you can. I think there's sometimes this impression that you are organizing the menu or organizing information on your website the way that like a grocery store organizes items, where they put like the milk at the back. It's the most common thing you want to get. And they're hoping that you walk through the store and you say, well, I'll pick up bread, I'll get some fruit, I'm going to go by the deli. And you end up going in for milk and coming out with 24 things, right?
Yeah.
That does not apply to website navigation. Somebody wants to get to what they want to get to, and they're not going to like meander and wander around your site. Or there are at least better ways of enticing them into doing that other than the website's navigation. I don't think the navigation should be where you are pushing people into content that you think they might find valuable, but it's not what they're seeking out. Instead, I think there's all sorts of opportunities, like try to get them after they download your white paper or make that purchase. Once they get to that completion page, tell them, here's our blog. Here's one of the most recent posts on our blog. But subscribe to our email newsletter. If you ordered this, you might be interested in that. Like, that is the time to push the things that you want to raise awareness of. But I don't think you do that by obstructing someone's path to whatever the thing is that they're trying to get to, or just needlessly kind of cluttering it up. So anyway, that's something to consider. I think I've seen people try to use the navigation as kind of like a place to advertise and push stuff. And it's like, I think that's a very bad idea. I think you should go about that through other channels where it'll be more effective and not upset people. Because the worst thing that you can do is, in trying to push something that you don't have a lot of awareness of, you're hurting the thing that somebody really wants to get to. And so that's an important thing to think of when you're optimizing your website's navigation. You should be looking at your analytics every once in a while, seeing what people are clicking on, and it's a very simple set of things that you can do. Remove items that rarely get clicked on. You can also move them. You can move them out of the main navigation into a footer or into some sort of de-emphasized secondary navigation that's at the top of the screen and smaller and so on. Like you often see these things of your footers should contain things that are like legally you have to have, your privacy policy, your terms of service, whatever else. And if you find that there's other content that just people don't care about, like you see a lot of people emphasize like their board of directors is right under their about page. Maybe that shouldn't be part of the navigation at all, or should be like de-emphasized down to a footer for the small number of people who might be interested in it. So everything in the navigation should be things that are like massively clicked on. You may also consider renaming or relabeling things that rarely get clicked. It may be that they are important and you see that a lot of people do want to get to them, but you have things under some odd heading. Like rather than putting things under products, just emphasize those product categories, move those to the top, whatever the case might be.
Yeah, always look at your data, and if users are not navigating through your site like you expected, then try to find out why and experiment. See if you can make data look more like you thought it should be, what you thought would make sense for your site. So, yeah.
But so very few of our, at least a lot of the clients that we start working with, seems like they haven't done that because they've been in that trap of, we only redo the menu navigation when we pay to redo the entire website. Mm-hmm. And that just locks you into, okay, then you're only responsive to data once every 2 or 3 or 5 years. And that's
Yeah.
bad. You should always be pushing some new like redesign to the website with the eye towards, okay, now it's time to start measuring and validating the decisions that we made, or invalidating them and changing. And so whatever you do needs to be flexible enough that you can change that navigation really easily. Change the names of things, reorder things, take things out, add things in. So you talked about mobile earlier, and
Yeah.
mobile navigation, I think, is still like, to me, it's an unsolved problem for a lot of even major retail sites that you think have like millions of dollars worth of reasons to get it right. So, you already mentioned like keep it simple. You may even want to have mobile navigation have less options than your desktop navigation, especially if you can eliminate things that people are unlikely to do on their mobile device.
Yeah.
And then, relevant examples aren't springing to mind, but you can think of some things that are just going to be more cumbersome to do on a mobile phone. And if that is the case, maybe de-emphasize those out of the main navigation when on mobile. But again, the Nielsen Norman Group, which does a lot of really great usability studies, so we're going to cite them all the time, talks about like avoiding the things like the hamburger menu. And for people not familiar with that term, it means that little 3 horizontal lines stacked on top of each other that's often used as, I don't know, the icon for menu, I guess. It's supposed to denote like a list of things. But just doing simple things like putting a down arrow there and the word menu instead makes it just super obvious to a person that that's the menu, rather than having to click. Like your mind gravitates towards words, especially at the top. So just adding that menu takes the friction out of that experience and means that somebody is going to click into the next thing on your website rather than click the back button out of frustration, not knowing where to go.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you can, I think it's best if you can avoid hiding the menu at all and just have a horizontal menu. You're probably going to have to do something like this is called, I think, priority plus menu, where you then just have a more button for the rest of the links that are not that important. So you just choose maybe 1 to 3, maybe 4 links that you want to show, and you hide the rest because you're not. It could be something like on the site we talked about earlier in the Orbit Media example, where they practically hid the about, contact, and blog. They really de-emphasize it because they don't think those are important for that particular site. So then you have
And especially on
unhidden,
mobile, the person might be on mobile because like something just broke down that they have and they want to order the new thing, or they want to quickly get to read whatever they want to read on the site, and it's going to be part of that main navigation that's categorized, rather than, oh, what's your latest like blog offering? You can reach somebody on mobile better by they're going to see your latest blog post via Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, or you just sent out your email newsletter to them and they're going to read it that way. It's highly unlikely that they're going to be navigating to you for that.
Yeah, so I think this is a clever solution. Priority plus being you put the priority first, and then you have a plus to collapse to expand the rest of the links. But you also have to be careful not to choose too many, because for the priority part, because they also need to be able to tap them with your fingers. So they have to have some real estate each link, so that you don't accidentally. That's always something you have to think about as well.
Yeah, so you don't want them to be tiny and pushed together.
Yeah, I mean, it's great
so
that it's.
You have to have the world's smallest fingers.
Yeah, it's great that it's not hidden, because you don't have to make that extra tap just to show the menu, and you have it in front of you immediately. But you definitely don't want to instead make the user likely to tap the wrong links, so they then have to tap back and attempt again. That's much worse than just having a hidden menu then that has a menu label on it. But done right, I think, an unhidden horizontal menu on a mobile device, yeah, it's possible. You can do it well, but it's not easy. So I still see the hamburger menu a lot today. And like you said, I guess the mobile menus are not fully solved yet. It's a difficult problem. There are so many devices. So sometimes you may just have to look at your data and see, okay, I'm just going to mainly optimize for these devices because most of my target market uses this device. We both know there's it's very possible to do that. There's a lot of people using particular brands, and you may just want to optimize for their experience. But that's not always the case, of course. So the hamburger menu does have its place. It's very compatible with probably every device because the menu, once expanded, you just have the full width of the phone, however small or big it is. And it's very hard to do it poorly. It's always going to be mediocre, I would say, but it's hard to make a very bad hamburger menu. Would you agree? It's yeah.
And that's why it's used a lot. But I mean, a lot of these things get solved by paying attention to the data and being able to switch this stuff all the time, right? Like you're going to evolve into the right place by just following the data and getting rid of things that don't work and putting in things that do.
And
so
that's
a lot of this should be about like reading a best practice and then like getting your menu lined up according to what experts say. I mean, that should be how you start, and then again, like pay attention to the data and be willing to change.
I mean, you don't want to change it every day. So I mean, most users of well, don't want to say most sites, but for a lot of sites, most users are new users, not returning visitors. So I wouldn't worry too much about confusing your repeat users when you're changing things. I'm not saying you should do it every day, but yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of changing things a little bit every month, every quarter, because most users are, the sites that I've been working with are new visitors, so it doesn't really matter. And I think if you make things clearer, your repeat visitors will appreciate it anyway. But, don't do it every day. You won't have enough data to work with anyway. Then you have to wait a little bit depending on the traffic to the site. You may have to wait a month or a quarter to get data that you can work with. That just depends on your volume.
Yeah. And most of the organizations that we work with probably just don't even have the bandwidth to do it that often. Like how much time can they dedicate towards like looking at the data, trying to make sense of it, and saying how do we make a change? Probably quarterly, maybe a couple times a year is the most that they'd want to do it. And so your mileage may vary. I mean, you get a ton of traffic and it's going to make a big difference to you, then you've got more incentive to get it right. You might want to do it more
you'll
often.
have more incentive also if you're selling something versus if you have an informational site. So there's a lot of different nuances to how often it makes sense to do this. But it's on case-by-case basis. But do it sometimes. I think that's definitely, once a year at least, I think is good for everyone.
Yeah, so from a super modern problem of hamburger menus and how much navigation elements do you put onto mobile, I want to talk about something that I guess I thought was a little bit old school before I started reading about it again, which are breadcrumbs. So breadcrumbs, for people not familiar with the term, you see it on Amazon and lots of other retail sites, especially where it's showing you where you are kind of in the tree of categories, right? So I'm looking at new dishes for my kitchen. I'm in Amazon and I'm looking now at home and kitchen flatware plates, might be the area that I'm in terms of the navigation. I guess some of this seems like a lot of modern sites aren't using this, but it is a good practice if you do have highly structured data like that, where it's like nested categories within categories within categories, and people are drilling down and maybe getting to the wrong place and needing to go back up. It's a quick way for them to pop back a level or sort of change the path that they're on. I mean, breadcrumbs are named for Hansel and Gretel leaving breadcrumbs behind them to find their way back. Yeah.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
you may need to find your way back.
Yeah, it's for the sites like we were talking about earlier with the mega dropdown, that kind of site. But it doesn't make sense if you just have one top level navigation, because you would just be saying home, about, home, contact, home, blog. That doesn't help you much go back anywhere. So
Yeah, and
uh,
you may not want to have that navigation element like the breadcrumbs appear at all on those pages. You may want them
no.
just to be enabled for those things where you're diving deep into that structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Then
Uh,
it's helpful.
yeah, but a good way of a good rule of thumb is like always make it clear where the user is located on the site. And with things like the about or contact page, it may be as simple as just changing the like current page highlight color. That's highlighted brighter white than the rest of the menu
Sure,
items, so you can say like, oh, I'm
bold
on the
it, or
contact page.
some obvious way show who you are.
Yeah. It's also pretty obvious when the page has the word about at the top, but whatever.
Sure.
Okay, I also want to talk about talking about those like nested categories and that sort of like highly treed part of your website, right? Cross-linking is another important part of your website navigation, conveying the structure to Google and giving it this sort of juice. So what's the best way to explain this? So you've got these things that are like highly nested, highly categorized and structured, but you may be writing about them all the time on like your blog. So it's good to be cross-linking those things and making those links like two ways. There might be dynamic ways of doing this, like if you write a new blog post about your awesome new compass that you're selling, or you write a blog post about a white paper that you've just posted like deep within the category structure of your website, you should be linking to those things in the blog, but conversely, you should be linking to the blog from those white paper sites, because maybe somebody gets a link to that white paper and they go like, oh, this is a lot to read, right? This is a 40-page of reading investment. I don't know if this is even exactly about the topic that I'm researching. But if it says, recent posts about this paper, and that's set up to be something that the user doesn't really have to think about. If a blog just like happens to link to it, maybe the website recognizes that and links back. That can really help. It can help to spread the incoming links from that blog post deep into that category structure. It can take links to that category structure and help promote the blog because they're cross-linking there. And it's again like serving the user by giving them the content that they want. Oops, I found something that's way too much of an investment. I can get to something that's shorter. So blogs to products, products to blogs, whether you have an information product or a physical product that you're trying to sell. Just keep creating high quality content and link back and forth. The other thing that Search Engine Journal brought up was like tracking parameters within these menus, like on-click event handlers. Anyway, there's a lot of like tags and tracking things that can end up screwing up how this navigation operates, and especially how it's indexed by search engines.
Yeah,
So I think keeping
you have
things
to clean that
simple.
out.
Yeah.
From Google Analytics, yeah.
Yeah, and so
So
we're getting way into like the technical thickets of things, but the other thing is to avoid
sure.
JavaScript. If you don't know about that stuff, it's just something to put on a list and ask a developer about. Are we using a lot of JavaScript to expose menus and links and things like that? Try not to do that. Try to make it just simple HTML that's super easy for machines to read. And most likely, avoiding JavaScript is also going to mean that you're avoiding a lot of the elements that usability studies show are bad. Like you're not using dropdowns and hover effects and things being exposed and things unfolding, especially these menus where you have to hover to like drill down into them, and then if you slightly move the mouse wrong, the menu collapses back on
Yeah.
itself, and you're no longer where you want to be. So avoid those sorts of things. But, we've covered a lot of ground here. I think
Yeah.
these are some good, like, getting back to basics. We want to cover this stuff on upcoming episodes. We're going to try to cover both tactics like this, like the sort of ground level stuff that you've got to get right, along with strategy about what to write about, how to organize your content, that sort of stuff. So I hope this was useful. I'm going to punch all this stuff up into the show notes and provide links to everything that we've talked about today. So if you're interested in this stuff, if it makes sense to you, if you think you can execute it for your own website, click into the show notes and it should bring you links to all these different blogs and websites that we've cited.